How to Move Like a Boss in a World Full of Sheep. Written and published by Stoic Guardian. Chapter 1. The moment you realize you're not like them. There's a moment, not dramatic, not loud, where something just clicks. You look around and see the routines, the noise, the constant seeking of approval, and suddenly it doesn't make sense anymore. The small talk feels smaller. The rules feel invisible yet heavy. The crowd moves one way and your body instinctively turns the other. It's not rebellion, it's recognition. Something inside you says, "This isn't mine." The fear, the conformity, the endless need to be validated by people who don't even know themselves. It no longer fits. You're not angry about it, you're just awake now. This is the moment you realize you're not here to play small, not here to blend in, not here to follow every trend just to be seen. You're here to move differently, to lead, to walk with clarity, not chaos. And the second you stop trying to belong to their world, you start belonging to your own. It may feel disorienting at first. You were trained to belong, to be polite, to say yes, to stay quiet when something felt off. But deep down, you've always sensed the difference in how you think, in how you feel, in how you move through the world with a sense that there's more truth, more meaning, more alignment than what most people settle for. And now, you're not interested in settling. You're not interested in living on autopilot. You're ready to move with intention. You don't need everyone to agree. You don't need a round of applause. You just need your own inner voice to say yes. That's the path. That voice, the one you've silenced for years in the name of being liked, is coming back online, and once it does, the game changes. Not outside you, but within, quietly. When you move like a boss, it doesn't start with money or dominance or attention. It starts with alignment, with asking, does this feel true to me? And what am I allowing that no longer honors who I'm becoming? The world is full of noise, people chasing things they don't even want just because they're too afraid to stop and listen. But you're no longer afraid to slow down, to observe, to question. You don't react like you used to. You respond. You don't prove like you used to. You pause. That's what makes you different. Not ego, not arrogance, awareness. You're not trying to be better than anyone. You're just no longer available for what drains you. That shift, that's what they'll feel before you ever speak it. The calm, the groundedness, the steady power of someone who sees through the show and chooses to lead instead. They'll call you quiet, distant, guarded. Let them. Because the old version of you would have tried to explain, tried to shrink the truth to make others more comfortable. But you don't do that anymore. You don't make yourself smaller so others can feel bigger. You don't hand your confidence to people who haven't earned the right to speak into your life. You're no longer addicted to fitting in. You're committed to standing out, silently. You realize now that the loudest thing in any room isn't a voice, it's presence. And your presence is no longer scattered, it's intentional. It walks ahead of you, it speaks without words, and it says this: I'm not here to be chosen. I already chose myself. So now, breathe into this moment. You're not like them. And that's not something to hide, it's something to honor. You don't move for applause. You don't react for attention. You don't chase noise. You move like a boss. Calm, clear, focused, rooted. This is where the old story ends, the one where you waited to be accepted. And this is where the new chapter begins, where you accept yourself fully and lead from that truth. Let the world move how it moves. You move differently now. With direction, with self-trust, with power that whispers, I don't need to be seen, to know I'm real. I am not here to follow noise. I walk in calm power. I do not chase attention. I move with clarity, confidence, and quiet command. I am not like them. I'm me. And that is enough. Chapter 2. The noise is designed to keep you small. The world is loud on purpose. It's not just busy, it's engineered that way. Notifications, deadlines, metrics, expectations, content designed to distract, conversations built to compete, everything moving fast, faster, fastest, until you forget to even ask, why am I running? That's the plan, not a conspiracy, but a conditioning. A system built to keep you plugged in, productive, and performing. And while most people don't notice, because noise is their normal, you're starting to feel it differently. You feel the ache, the dullness, the fatigue of always being on. You scroll, but it leaves you empty. You respond, but it feels hollow. You achieve, and still, you're restless. Because the noise has done its job, it's made you question your pace, your worth, your intuition. But you're waking up now. You're starting to see this isn't just overwhelming, it's intentional. And the most dangerous part of the noise? It convinces you that silence is failure, that rest is laziness, that stillness means falling behind. So you keep filling your life with more content, more productivity, more opinions, more hustle, until you don't even remember what your own voice sounds like anymore. But there's a reason the noise feels off now. It's because you're no longer available for distraction disguised as ambition. You're no longer trying to keep up with people who aren't even going anywhere real. You're beginning to crave what the noise can't give you: depth, presence, authenticity, inner calm. You want fewer tabs open in your mind. You want to stop rushing to prove what's already true. You want your breath back. And that craving? That's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's your soul asking for your own attention again. You've begun to notice how the world rewards loudness, but not truth. The one who speaks the most is called a leader. The one who posts the most is seen as successful. But you're not chasing visibility anymore. You're chasing alignment. Because noise may get you noticed, but only alignment will make you feel whole. And now, you're choosing to move with intention, not urgency. You're noticing how much of your old energy came from reaction, not from rooted clarity. You used to wake up and plug into the world's agenda. Now you start by plugging into yourself. You ask, what do I need today? What can I release? You're learning to value your focus as sacred. You no longer entertain every distraction just because it's loud. You don't pick up every call. You don't respond to every energy. You know now, not all access is earned. Not all movement is growth. This isn't about isolation. It's about elevation. It's about becoming so clear in who you are that you stop needing the noise to tell you. You start measuring your life by how it feels, not how it looks. You stop comparing your path to people who are still asleep in theirs. You let go of timelines that were never yours. And you begin to understand that silence isn't a threat. It's a tool, a reset, a return. That's why bosses move differently, not because they're faster, but because they're focused. While the crowd reacts, you respond. While they broadcast, you build. You don't post your process, you protect it. You don't announce every step, you trust the timing. And that quiet discipline? That's what separates leaders from followers, not noise, but nerve. So today, give yourself permission to unplug. Not to run away, but to return. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to keep up to stay relevant. You don't need to perform peace to prove you have it. You just need to choose it, right here, right now. The noise was designed to keep you small, but you were designed to rise. And now that you've seen the difference, you'll never unsee it. You'll feel the static before it enters. You'll choose stillness instead of speed, and you'll walk in a power that doesn't demand attention because it commands presence. That's how you move like a boss in a world that's too loud to listen. You don't compete with the noise, you rise above it. The noise is not my guide. I unplug from urgency. I release the pressure to perform. I choose stillness over static, clarity over chaos. I lead from within, calmly, fully, powerfully. Chapter 3. You weren't born to blend in. From the beginning, something about you didn't quite fit. Maybe you were quieter. Maybe you asked too many questions. Maybe you sensed things others ignored. The energy in the room, the tone behind the words, the tension under the surface. And you tried, didn't you? You tried to fit into their rhythm, to mirror their pace, to soften your instincts just enough to feel included. But no matter how much you adjusted, there was always this quiet ache, this feeling that you were playing a role in a script you didn't believe in. That ache wasn't rejection. It was reminder, a subtle pull back to yourself, a whisper that said, you weren't born to blend in. You were born to stand clear, to move differently, to lead from alignment, not approval. You may have learned how to shrink yourself early, to play safe, to be agreeable. You became fluent in code switching, in people-pleasing, in performance. Not because you lacked identity, but because you were protecting it. You sensed that your depth, your honesty, your refusal to follow blindly made others uncomfortable. So you learned to dim, to delay, to defer. And in the process you forgot what it felt like to live fully. But that forgetting, it's fading now. You're starting to hear yourself again, and it's not a roar. It's a return, a steady truth rising back to the surface. I don't have to belong to what doesn't feel like home. I don't have to mirror people who are lost just to avoid being alone. I don't have to stay silent to feel safe. The price of blending in has become too high, and your soul is done paying. When you stop blending in, you start living in bold honesty. You stop asking, will they accept me? And start asking, does this reflect me? That's when everything begins to shift. Your energy, your choices, your environment. You don't settle for spaces that tolerate you. You seek spaces that see you. And when you don't find them, you create them. That's leadership. That's the boss energy they don't teach. Not climbing ladders built by others, but building your own foundation from clarity. You're no longer the person who waits for permission. You give it to yourself. You don't need consensus to trust your path. You don't need applause to validate your direction. You only need alignment and the courage to follow it, even if it means walking alone for a while. Standing out doesn't mean performing. It means unmasking. It means letting go of the version of you built for their comfort. It means walking into rooms without explaining your silence, your standards, or your softness. It means saying, this is who I am, not in defiance, but in devotion. Because when you live in devotion to your truth, you become unshakable. The world might still try to mold you. The crowd might still try to mold you. The crowd might still call you too much, too distant. Let them. Let them project. Let them misunderstand. Your job isn't to become more palatable. Your job is to become more yourself. And every time you stop blending, you give permission for others to do the same. Not with your words, with your walk, your presence, your energy. That's how movements begin, not with noise, but with alignment that refuses to shrink. So today, say this softly but firmly, I wasn't born to blend in. I release the need to conform. I no longer apologize for what sets me apart. I don't play small to make others comfortable. I don't mirror energy that confuses my spirit. I lead not to stand above, but to stand within my truth. I honor my path. I honor my pace. And I walk with the quiet power of someone who finally stopped asking, who do I need to become? And started asking, Who was I before I forgot? I was not made to disappear into the crowd. I was made to stand clear. I am done shrinking. I lead from truth. I lead from self. I move boldly, without asking for permission. Chapter 4. Clarity is the first power move, before anything else. Before momentum, before mastery, before leadership, comes clarity. Because until you know who you are, what you want, and what you no longer tolerate, you're not moving with power, you're just moving. Noise can make you fast, pressure can make you act, but only clarity can make you effective. Clarity is your compass, it's your pace setter, it's the inner stillness that asks, why am I doing this, and is it true for me? Without that clarity, even your ambition becomes a distraction. You say yes to too many things. You pursue goals that don't feed your soul. You accept relationships that leave you depleted. You chase milestones that aren't even yours. And you wake up successful but not satisfied. That's the cost of living without clarity. But now, you're choosing something deeper. Not just movement, not just hustle. You're choosing alignment. Clarity doesn't always arrive in loud realizations. Sometimes it comes in quiet discomfort. The way your body tenses in certain rooms. The way your spirit slumps when you answer that call. The heaviness in your chest after you agree to something that didn't sit right. That discomfort? That's your truth tapping on the glass. Not to break you, but to wake you. Because clarity doesn't always feel good at first. Sometimes it means facing where you've been performing. Sometimes it means admitting you've outgrown the things you once begged for. Sometimes it means walking away from what looks good but feels wrong. And that moment, when you stop negotiating with what no longer fits, that's when your clarity lands. Not with chaos, with calm. Like something inside you exhales and says, there it is, now we can begin. When you move with clarity, your energy shifts. You no longer over-explain. You don't chase. You don't justify your no. You begin to understand that confusion is a choice, and you're no longer choosing it. You're not afraid to pause now, to go still, because you've learned that peace is the perfect filter. If something costs your peace, it's not aligned. If something feels forced, it's not truth. You don't need 10 people to co-sign your direction. You need inner alignment. That's what makes you a boss, not noise, not approval, just clarity. You move slower but hit harder. You speak less but say more. You enter rooms with grounded presence, and your energy says, I know who I am, I know what I'm here for, and I don't need to perform to prove it. Clarity also means you stop betraying yourself to stay accepted. You don't say yes when your whole body means no. You don't keep people around just because they're familiar. You don't hold on to habits just because they once helped you survive. Clarity asks, does this version of me still serve who I'm becoming? And when the answer is no, you release. Without guilt, without noise, without needing everyone to understand, because clarity isn't about being liked, it's about being honest. Honest about your needs, your timing, your truth. And that honesty? It clears the fog. It quiets the confusion. It builds the kind of confidence that doesn't sway in the wind. The kind of confidence that stands, even when no one claps. So today, remind yourself with certainty, clarity is my first power move. I do not move in chaos. I do not move to be seen. I move because I am anchored in truth. I listen to my body. I trust my timing. I pause when something feels off. And when I am clear, I am unstoppable. My clarity doesn't need to shout, it simply shows. In how I speak, in what I allow, in where I place my energy. I am no longer confused, I am clear. And that is where my leadership begins. I move with clarity. I no longer chase noise. I no longer explain confusion. I choose alignment over approval, and I walk forward, calm, clear, and unshakably grounded in who I am. Chapter 5. Discipline. The quiet muscle they never see coming. Discipline doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't scream for attention or demand applause. It's quiet, like a muscle built in silence, rep by rep, choice by choice. It's not something you post. It's something you practice. Every time you get up when you don't feel like it, every time you follow through when no one's watching, every time you keep your promise to yourself without needing the world to witness it. Discipline is what separates wishful thinkers from consistent builders. It's the power move no one talks about because it's not entertaining, but it's everything. The ones who move like bosses don't get there by hype. They get there by habit. The most powerful part of your routine isn't the burst. It's the return, the decision to come back, again and again, to what serves your vision. That return is your proof. You don't need motivation every day. You need structure. You don't need to feel like it. You need to decide like it. Discipline starts when the inspiration ends, when it's raining, when you're tired, when your mood is off, when the world is loud. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you value. And when you live by what you value, your life takes shape, slowly, deliberately. You begin to create patterns that don't rely on force, but on flow. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're always inspired, but because you've become reliable. And reliability, that's the root of real confidence. Not talent, not talk. Consistency. You show up for your peace. You show up for your clarity. You show up for the version of you that doesn't yet exist, but is waiting on the other side of discipline. The world won't always see your discipline. They'll see the result and call it luck. They'll see your energy and call it effortless. But what they don't see, the early mornings, the quiet sacrifices, the choices you made when no one clapped, and that's okay, because discipline isn't about being seen, it's about being solid. You're not just building a life. You're building a system inside yourself, one that holds you when motivation fades, one that reminds you of who you are when the world gets noisy. You're building a rhythm that doesn't need pressure to work, it just flows, because it's yours. That's why discipline is a boss move, not because it controls you, but because it frees you. It simplifies your life, it removes the guesswork. It becomes the quiet engine that carries you through days most people quit. And when you fall off, you don't shame yourself, you reset. Because real discipline isn't perfection, it's recovery. It's the art of returning with grace. The strength to recommit without self-punishment. You don't have to start over every time. You just have to come back. Come back to your breath, come back to your structure. Come back to the path that makes sense for you. And when you do, you realize every small act of follow-through is a vote for the life you're building. Not a life built on chaos, not a life built on impulse, but a life built on quiet inner power. The kind that says, I don't need hype to move. I don't need noise to stay consistent. I've trained myself to show up, no matter how I feel. So today, speak this into your mind. Discipline is my quiet muscle. It's how I lead myself when no one else is watching. It's how I become the version of me who doesn't just dream, but delivers. I don't need motivation. I build momentum. I don't need pressure. I honor structure. And I don't chase perfection. I practice presence. Every act of follow-through is a reflection of my power, and I return to it with calm, with trust, with pride. I move with quiet discipline. I show up without force. I return without shame. I follow through, not for performance, but for peace. My structure is sacred. My consistency is power. Chapter 6. Boundaries are boss moves in disguise. They won't always see your boundaries as power moves. In fact, some will call them walls, call them harsh, call them selfish, but that's only because they were used to you without them. When you finally draw a line, not out of bitterness, but out of balance, it disrupts a dynamic that always benefited from your silence. But that disruption, that's not drama. It's healing. It's you saying, I'm done being available at the cost of myself. A boundary isn't a rejection, it's a recalibration. It's not a punishment, it's a protection. And when you set one, you're not closing a door, you're simply choosing what energy gets to walk through it. That's not cold, that's clarity. And clarity is what bosses move from, not guilt, not fear, just grounded truth. You weren't always like this. You used to say yes because you were scared they'd leave. You used to overextend, over-explain, over-deliver, just to be liked. You tolerated things that made your chest tighten and your voice shrink. You confused patience with permission. You mistook people-pleasing for love. But every time you said yes to something that felt like a no, you betrayed yourself a little. Betrayal, even when it's self-inflicted, builds slowly like a weight you forget you're carrying until your body says, enough. That's when the shift begins. You start speaking softer truths with stronger roots. You start saying, not this time, not this way, not anymore. And the people who love you, they adjust. Either way, you win. Boundaries are sacred because they don't just tell others how to treat you. They teach you how to treat yourself. They say, I don't have to be exhausted to be worthy. I don't have to explain myself to be valid. I don't have to bleed emotionally just to prove I'm loyal. And when those truths land in your body, you begin to build a life where your peace is protected, not performed. You stop giving away pieces of yourself just to keep others whole. You realize that every time you choose discomfort in the short term, by saying no, by stepping back, by not replying, you're choosing freedom in the long term. That's the real move, not the one they cheer for, the one that keeps your soul intact. You don't set boundaries to be difficult. You set them because you're done with difficulty, disguised as duty. You're no longer interested in managing other people's feelings at the cost of your own. You're done shrinking to keep the peace. Now, you are the peace, and you protect it by design. You don't raise your voice, you raise your standards, and the more consistent you get, the more natural it feels. You don't explain your no, you embody it. You don't second-guess your need for space, you schedule it. You don't wonder if someone will still like you once you draw the line. You ask yourself, do I still like me if I don't? That question alone recenters your whole life. So today, breathe this truth into your nervous system. My boundaries are love in action. I don't set them from fear. I set them from truth. I don't owe everyone access. I don't give out energy like it's free. I choose what enters my space. I choose who stays, and I choose myself. Not as a defense, but as a devotion. My boundaries aren't rejection, they're direction. They don't push people out, they pull me in, back to my center. And from that center, I lead. From that center, I protect my peace. And from that center, I become unshakable. I honor my energy with boundaries. I don't defend them. I don't dilute them. I hold them with grace. My peace is protected, not by accident, but by choice. I am safe in my standards. Chapter 7. How to think without permission. You've been thinking all your life, but not always for yourself. You were trained to analyze, to memorize, to respond, but not to question, not to pause, not to step back and ask, does this make sense to me? Is this true in my body? That's what it means to think without permission, to stop outsourcing your beliefs, your values, your direction. It doesn't mean rejecting everything, it means filtering everything and slowing it down. feeling it before following it. In a world that teaches you what to think, when to think, and who to become, thinking for yourself becomes a quiet form of revolution. It's not about noise, it's about returning to your center. And from that center asking, what's real for me? What's mine to hold? What am I ready to let go of, even if they taught me it was truth? Thinking without permission means allowing your thoughts to be yours, even if they're unpopular. It means giving yourself room to be uncertain, to explore, to evolve. It means no longer needing the crowd to co-sign your curiosity. You're not looking to be right all the time, you're looking to be real. That shift in posture, it changes everything. You stop speaking just to fit in. You stop agreeing just to avoid tension. You stop performing intelligence to earn acceptance. You realize that clarity doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from asking better questions. You were never meant to be a copy of someone else's conclusions. You were meant to build your own, to think deeply, to stand calmly, and to trust that your way of seeing the world, even if quiet, has value. This chapter of your growth isn't loud, it's internal. It's when you stop repeating what you were taught and start rebuilding what actually fits. You begin to notice the programming, the need to respond immediately, the discomfort with silence, the anxiety when you go against the grain. But instead of reacting, you pause, you listen, you study your own patterns, you question your triggers, you become a student of your own mind. Not to control it, but you no longer jump at every opinion. You let them pass through without becoming yours. You no longer absorb energy just because it's persuasive. You weigh it against your values. That's thinking without permission. It's not about ego, it's about discernment. You don't think to impress, you think to understand, and that understanding becomes the foundation for how you move. When you reclaim your mental space, everything external loses its grip. Trends don't move you, criticism doesn't derail you, praise doesn't inflate you, because your compass isn't outside anymore, it's internal. You begin to lead your life from a place of curiosity instead of compliance. You ask, who told me I had to be this way? Who benefits when I stay small? What truth have I been avoiding because it would make me stand alone? And then you do the boldest thing of all. You keep thinking. You keep questioning. You don't fold for comfort. You don't chase validation. You follow your thoughts to their roots and pull up everything that doesn't align. That's not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. That's real freedom. Not loud, not chaotic, just rooted, present, sovereign. So today, affirm this quietly but completely. I no longer wait for permission to think, to question, or to know. I explore what's true for me. I challenge what feels off. I don't need approval to believe differently. I trust my process, I trust my questions, and I trust that my mind, when anchored in calm, in clarity, in truth, will always lead me home. I am not here to repeat. I am here to remember, and what I remember is mine. I think without permission, I ask without fear, I question with curiosity. I don't follow blindly, I lead quietly. My thoughts are mine, my truth is earned, my mind is free. Chapter 8. Emotional control is leadership energy. There's a difference between bottling your emotions and owning them. One is fear, the other is power. Emotional control isn't about pretending you don't feel, it's about knowing when and how to respond. It's about holding your ground when chaos tries to drag you under. Because real leaders don't just guide others, they govern themselves. And self-leadership starts with emotional discipline. You don't let your triggers speak louder than your truth. You don't let your reactions write the story. You pause, you breathe, you observe. That pause, that's where power lives. Not in pretending to be unbothered, not in suppressing anger or sadness, but in mastering your expression, in being able to say, I feel this deeply, and I still get to choose how I move. You weren't taught this. Most people aren't. You were taught to either explode or suppress, to lash out or go silent, and in between those extremes, your power got lost. But now you're reclaiming it, not by being passive, not by being cold, but by learning how to regulate, to hold your emotional storms like a seasoned captain, steady, grounded, present. That doesn't mean you don't cry. It means you don't let breakdowns dictate direction. It doesn't mean you never feel anger. It means you stop using it as a language. You learn how to sit with discomfort instead of projecting it. You learn how to listen to your triggers instead of becoming them. And when that happens, when your emotions stop running the show, you rise, quietly, strongly, unshakably. Emotional control also teaches you how to move in rooms without giving your power away. You no longer react to every tone. You don't match every mood. You don't let someone's chaos become your climate. You carry your own weather. That's what leadership feels like, walking into spaces where tension exists and not becoming part of the noise. Your energy leads. Your calm speaks louder than their drama, and people feel it. Not because you perform stillness, but because you practice it. You've learned that not every fight is yours. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every shift in someone else's behavior requires you to explain yourself. You let the noise swirl, and you stay centered. That is emotional wealth. That is nervous system power. And that is the kind of leadership no one can fake. You'll still have moments where your emotions spike. That's human. But the difference now? You don't live in those spikes. You don't spiral. You recenter. You notice when your breath shortens. You feel when your thoughts speed up. And instead of letting the wave crash without you, you ground. You come back to the body, to the breath. You learn how to regulate first, respond later. That's a skill most people never develop, but you're doing it. Not perfectly, but intentionally. That intention is everything. That's what separates reaction from response. That's what turns emotional awareness into emotional mastery. And mastery? That's how you lead your life, moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice, no longer hijacked, no longer passive, just present. So today, let this anchor in. I own my emotions. They do not own me. I feel deeply, but I lead wisely. I pause before I react. I breathe before I speak. I regulate before I respond. That is leadership. That is power. That is the quiet, grounded energy of someone who no longer leaks emotional chaos into the world, because they've learned to hold it, to heal it, and to rise from it with calm. I walk forward, not emotionless, but emotionally sovereign. I lead with emotional wisdom. I respond with clarity. I move with calm. My triggers are teachers, not rulers. My emotions are data, not directions. I am steady, and I am strong. Chapter 9. Moving in silence isn't weak. It's tactical. You don't always have to speak your moves to make them real. You don't have to tell the world what you're building. You don't need to post your process, defend your growth, or explain your choices to be taken seriously. That pressure? To prove, to announce, to narrate every step, that's not strategy. That's survival. And you're not surviving anymore. You're leading, quietly, intentionally, with focus that isn't performative but precise. Moving in silence doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're protecting your energy, your progress, your peace, because some things grow better in the dark. Some seasons require fewer witnesses. Some breakthroughs demand solitude. And when you stop inviting people into rooms they haven't earned access to, you don't become cold, you become clear. Silence gives you space to hear your own voice again. It gives your intuition room to breathe. It reminds you that not every move needs applause to be powerful. Because when you're always narrating, you start shaping your path for the audience, not for yourself. You start choosing steps based on perception instead of purpose. But when you move in silence, you shift that energy inward. You stop asking, "How will they see this?" and start asking, "Does this feel true to me?" And that shift, that inner redirection, sharpens everything. Your vision clears, your doubts soften, your motivation deepens. Because you're no longer chasing validation, you're building from alignment, quietly, unshakably. There is a kind of peace that only comes when you stop oversharing. When you stop explaining your why to people committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop giving previews of a masterpiece still in progress, you realize that your path doesn't need to be loud to be legitimate. It just needs to be yours. You begin to trust timing instead of forcing announcements. You begin to protect your focus instead of performing ambition. You don't ghost people, you grow past them. You don't disappear, you recenter. And when you reappear, you don't owe anyone an origin story. You simply walk in different. Not louder, but calmer. And that calm, that silence, it says everything you don't need to. Moving in silence also protects your energy from projections, because not everyone wants to see you win. Some just want to keep you accessible, predictable, manageable. But silence removes the access. It stops the leaking. It cuts off the endless commentary. You no longer crowdsource your confidence. You no longer poll others before making a move. You think, you choose, you act. That's boss energy, not because it's flashy, but because it's focused. The world thinks silence is passive, but you know better now. Silence is tactical. It's what allows you to move clean, to shift quietly, to prepare without pressure, to become without asking for permission. That kind of silence, that's your new language. Not out of fear, but out of full control. So today, remind yourself with certainty, I move in silence, not because I have to, but because I choose to. I don't need to prove my path. I don't narrate every step. I protect my energy. I honor my process. And I trust that what I'm building will speak for itself, not in noise, but in results. My silence is not a gap, it is a shield, a strategy, a sanctuary. And in that sanctuary I am focused, aligned. I don't chase attention. I don't announce my growth. I move in silence. I build in peace. My life is not a performance. It's a plan. And it's unfolding on my terms. Chapter 10. You don't owe access to everyone. Just because someone knows your name doesn't mean they deserve your time. Just because they were once close doesn't mean they're still aligned. Just because they ask doesn't mean you have to give. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. You don't owe access to everyone, not to your mind, not to your energy, not to your spirit. You don't owe endless explanations for your silence. You don't owe emotional labor for people who refuse to meet you halfway. You don't owe space in your day to those who only show up when they need something. And the moment you realize this, not intellectually, but energetically, you stop bleeding into spaces that were never meant to hold you. You stop explaining your worth. You stop overgiving. You pause. And in that pause, you regain power. Access is not love. Access is not healing. Access is a privilege. And just like any privilege, it must be earned, respected, and sometimes revoked. Especially when it begins to cost you more than it contributes. You were raised, perhaps, to be open, to be kind, to always pick up the phone, to always answer the text, to always be the one who makes space. But kindness without discernment is exploitation in disguise. Love without boundaries is self-abandonment wearing a mask. And giving without check-ins becomes performance, not presence. That's not sustainable. That's not honorable. And that's not who you are anymore. You've grown. You've learned. You now know the difference between being generous and being drained. And the choice to protect your access, that's not rude, that's responsibility. You don't need to announce who you're stepping back from. You don't need a grand declaration. You just need quiet permission from yourself to pull back, to remove someone's front row seat in your life without guilt, to stop giving updates to people who didn't ask how you were when you were low, to stop checking in with people who only reach out when they want to be checked on. You no longer give your daily thoughts to timelines that never pour back into your peace. You no longer give your vulnerability to those who see it as weakness, and you no longer believe that loyalty means staying accessible at all times. Loyalty to others is noble, but loyalty to yourself is non-negotiable. That's the shift. That's the evolution. You're not closing off, you're curating. And as you curate, things change. Your circle might shrink, but your peace expands. Your schedule opens, but your energy rises. You stop filling your days with obligations, you start filling them with intention. You choose conversations that leave you clearer, not confused. You surround yourself with those who honor your presence, not just your performance. And the ones who don't understand your shift, that's okay. Let them misunderstand. Let them label you distant. Let them create their own stories, because you're no longer shaping your boundaries around other people's comfort. You're shaping them around your clarity. And clarity says, not everyone gets to know you deeply. Not everyone gets to reach you quickly. Not everyone gets to stay close. Access is earned, and your energy is expensive. So today, let this settle softly but completely. I do not owe access to everyone. My time is valuable. My energy is sacred. My peace is not up for negotiation. I don't explain my boundaries. I embody them. I don't prove my distance. I protect it. And the people meant for me, they'll feel my care even in my quiet. They'll respect my boundaries without needing a blueprint. They'll show up with presence, not pressure. Because the more I honor my space, the more I teach the world how to meet me there, calmly, honestly, and with care. My energy is not free. My attention is not owed. I choose who gets close. I decide who gets access. I protect my peace, not with walls, but with wisdom. Chapter 11. Rejection is just redirection to higher ground. Rejection hurts. It always has. It's sharp, personal, a sting that lingers longer than you expect. Whether it's a person, an opportunity, a room, a role, being told you're not wanted, not chosen, not enough, it slices through the surface and reaches something deeper. But what if it wasn't punishment? What if it wasn't the end of your worth, but the beginning of your redirection? Because sometimes rejection doesn't block the path, it is the path. It's life saying, not here, not this, not them. It's the universe rearranging your momentum, not to take something from you, but to clear the space for something better, aligned, higher vibrational, more worthy of your growth. Rejection feels like removal, but on a soul level, it's redirection. And that redirection is never random, it's always refining. You were taught to take rejection personally, to internalize it, to shrink, to question your value. You were taught to see it as proof that something's wrong with you. But it's not. Most of the time, it's a mirror showing you what no longer fits. A closed door that says, you've outgrown this room. A silence that means, it's time to listen inward, not outward. Rejection doesn't always feel like alignment, but it often is. Hidden in discomfort, masked in silence, cloaked in ending. What you thought was a loss might just be a liberation. What you chased that didn't work out may have spared you more pain than you can measure. The job that didn't call you back, the person who disappeared, the opportunity that slipped. They weren't detours, they were clearing lanes. And the beautiful thing about rejection? It strengthens your discernment. You stop trying to force your way into places that hesitate to receive you. You stop begging for tables where your voice is an afterthought. You stop molding yourself to meet expectations that weren't designed for your truth. And you start remembering, rejection isn't a reflection of your lack. It's a reflection of your path that sometimes requires distance, delay, even disappointment, so that your focus sharpens, so that your energy refines, so that your hunger evolves from needing to be chosen to choosing yourself. You're no longer desperate to be accepted, you're committed to being aligned. And that shift, from reaction to redirection, becomes your leadership. Not bitter, not broken, just elevated. They may never explain why they left, why they ghosted, why they passed, but you don't need the explanation anymore, because your clarity is louder than their absence. You understand now that when the door closes, it's not your job to knock harder. It's your job to turn around, with grace, with power, with vision. You don't chase what rejects your essence. You don't prove your worth to someone blind to it. You trust that closed doors lead to wider skies, and you walk not just away, but up. You rise because you're no longer anchoring your value to someone else's readiness. Some people can't receive you because they're not calibrated to your depth. That's not your fault, it's just your signal. Your signal to rise higher. So today, breathe this truth in gently. Rejection is not the end, it's alignment in motion. I don't chase what closes, I don't force what resists. I trust the redirection. I trust the higher ground. I trust that what's meant for me will find me, not when I beg, but when I believe. Every no is a sacred clearing, every loss is a quiet graduation. Every closed door is a whisper, this way instead, and I follow that whisper, not with fear, but with faith. Because I no longer see rejection as abandonment, I see it as elevation. What's not for me can't hold me. What rejects me redirects me. What leaves me frees me. I trust the path. I trust the redirection. I rise, not in spite of rejection, but because of it. Chapter 12. Stop explaining. Start embodying. There comes a moment in your growth when the urge to explain just dissolves. Not because you've given up, but because you've grown out of the need. You no longer feel like translating your boundaries into bite-sized comfort for others. You don't repackage your no to sound polite. You don't offer disclaimers for your silence. You stop handing out access to your process. Why? Because your energy has matured, because your alignment speaks louder than any explanation ever could. You've realized something powerful. You don't owe anyone your reasoning when your being already reflects your becoming. The more you embody your truth, the less you need to defend it, you simply live it. And that living becomes your language. That embodiment becomes your answer. You used to over-explain everything, your shifts, your absences, your decisions. You'd soften every edge of your truth, hoping it would land easier. You'd rehearse conversations in your head just to make sure you didn't offend anyone. You twisted your voice to be heard by people who never listened anyway. But now, you've stopped explaining your softness. You've stopped negotiating your instincts. You've stopped translating your intuition into something that makes other people feel less uncomfortable. Because clarity doesn't argue, peace doesn't explain, and truth, it doesn't beg to be received, it rests. Inside you, around you, as you. That resting becomes your power. It says, I don't need to tell you who I am. I just need to keep being who I am fully. And once you embody it, everything changes. You start walking into rooms without shrinking. You hold your silence without guilt. You say less, but your presence says more. People feel your boundaries before you speak them. They sense your growth before you post about it. You stop announcing your healing, you start honoring it, with your tone, with your pace, with the way you no longer flinch at being misunderstood, because when you stop performing for understanding, you start moving in wholeness. And in that wholeness, you no longer chase clarity, you become it. You lead by example, not explanation. You radiate from alignment, not performance. You realize now, your life isn't a pitch. Your journey isn't a press release. It's a path. And not everyone gets a map. You won't feel the need to prove yourself anymore. You'll feel the peace that comes from self-trust, that deep inner knowing that doesn't rush to be validated, that doesn't chase connection through oversharing. You'll speak less and be heard more, because you're not speaking to be liked. You're living to be free. Free from explaining away your standards, free from shrinking your transformation, free from apologizing for your alignment. You'll understand that the ones who really see you, they don't need a speech. They'll know by the way you carry your space. The way you answer only when it's necessary, the way you move not to convince, but to complete yourself. That movement, that's your new language, quiet, rooted, embodied. So today, breathe this in fully. I stop explaining, I start embodying. I don't negotiate my truth, I don't dilute my alignment. I don't explain my no, my growth, or my peace. I let my life speak, I let my energy lead, I let my embodiment be the answer to questions that no longer need to be asked. I am not here to convince. I am here to become, fully, deeply, completely, and in that becoming, I am already enough. I don't explain what I already embody. I don't perform my growth. I live it. My stillness is my statement. My clarity is my language. I walk in alignment, not apology. Chapter 13. Their opinions aren't your compass. It's easy to get lost in the noise. Everyone has something to say about how you should speak, love, grieve, rise, move. The world is full of loud voices trying to direct your life like it's theirs to shape. And for a long time, maybe you listened. You adjusted your truth to make it more acceptable. You delayed your healing to seem more digestible. You softened your edge because someone called it too much. But at some point, quietly, deeply, you realized their opinions aren't your compass. They don't live your life. They don't feel your pain. They don't carry your calling. And if they don't carry your cost, they don't get to dictate your course. That realization, it frees you, not because the opinions stop, but because they stop steering you. You were conditioned to seek approval, praised when you followed the script, validated when you were easy to digest. But being liked isn't the same as being seen, and the more you shape yourself to be accepted, the further you drift from your own truth. It's subtle, like trimming a little here, softening a little there, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize your own reflection. That's not peace, that's performance, and you're done with it. You don't shape your voice to please the crowd anymore. You shape your life to honor your clarity. You stop asking, do they approve of this version of me? And start asking, do I feel peace living this way? Because peace, not praise, is your new direction. It's not about becoming hardened, it's about becoming anchored. You don't need to defend every choice. You don't need to debate your timing. You don't owe explanations to people committed to misunderstanding you. Because you've outgrown the need to be agreed with in order to feel grounded. Some won't get your shift. Let them. Some will mock your silence. Let them. Because you've stopped living according to their map. You're building your own, a map based on intuition, based on breath, based on the calm that only comes when you trust your path more than you fear their opinion. That's not ego, that's emotional clarity. And when the opinions come, because they will. You don't shrink. You don't engage. You don't internalize. You pause. You ask, is this feedback or projection? Is this useful or just noise? And if it doesn't serve your growth, you release it, without drama, without rage, just a silent boundary that says, you don't get to rent space in my mind anymore. Because now, your self-trust is louder than their doubt, your alignment is stronger than their assumptions. You don't move to be seen, you don't pause to be praised, you move because it feels right. You pause because it's what you need. That kind of leadership, the kind that doesn't ask permission, becomes your true direction. So today, remind yourself softly and completely, their opinions are not my compass, my value is not up for debate, my direction is not public property, I don't chase validation, I choose alignment, I don't follow noise, I follow peace. The world can keep its commentary, I keep my clarity. I move with grounded trust in who I am, who I'm becoming, and what I know to be true. Even if no one claps, especially then. Their opinions don't lead me, their noise doesn't shape me. I follow my truth, I move with self-trust. I lead my life, not from approval, but from peace. Chapter 14. Walk alone is unique. Danger, sympathy and comfort, weight and movement, help, inconsonance, support and opulence. Distinguish, tone and manner. Requires HFTM. State. Not everyone will walk with you. Not everyone will understand your silence, your distance, your decisions. Some will fall away gently, others will resist your change, but the deeper your clarity gets, the quieter your circle becomes. And that's not a loss, it's a sign that your path is narrowing so your voice can rise. Because sometimes walking alone isn't loneliness, it's alignment. It's you choosing peace over popularity, truth over tradition, presence over performance. You're not isolating. You're recalibrating. And in that recalibration, you learn how to lead yourself. Without noise, without approval, without needing someone to hold your hand. That's where real strength is built. In the steps no one sees, in the chapters no one claps for, in the moments where your only company is your own breath, and it's finally enough. You used to walk with the crowd just to feel safe. You mirrored others just to feel connected. You agreed just to avoid conflict. But every step away from your truth took something with it. Your energy, your peace, your voice. And eventually you had to choose, fit in or come home to yourself. You chose home. Not the loud kind, the steady kind, the one that doesn't demand an audience, just a life. And from that place you started walking differently. Not to escape, but to remember that you don't need to be surrounded to feel supported, that you don't need noise to feel valid, that solitude isn't punishment, it's a return. A sacred silence where your intuition gets louder and you finally hear it. Leading from within means trusting your own timing, even when the world rushes past. It means honoring your boundaries, even when others call them walls. It means taking the step forward, even when you're not sure who's watching. Because self-leadership doesn't wait for applause, it creates its own rhythm. You show up not because you're being seen, but because you've made a vow to your highest self. I will not abandon you again. You may walk alone at times, but you walk with purpose. You hold your peace like a torch in the dark, and that light, even when it's only seen by you, is what makes you a leader. Not a title, not an audience, but consistency when no one's looking. And here's the beautiful part. The more you lead yourself, the more you attract others who are doing the same, not from codependence, but from resonance. You stop clinging to people just to feel full. You start meeting others who are full on their own. The connection becomes richer, cleaner, freer. You stop running from solitude because it's no longer empty, it's sacred. And if you must walk alone to protect that sacredness, you will, without bitterness, without explanation, without the need to prove that you're strong. You don't lead from force, you lead from frequency. And the ones meant for you will find you, not because you chased them, but because your energy made you undeniable. So today, let this truth settle like still water. If I must walk alone, I will, but I will not walk without direction. I lead from within. I guide myself with calm. I don't fear silence. I don't fear solitude. I rise with rhythm. I move with trust. I build with devotion. I am not waiting to be chosen. I choose myself fully, and from that choice, I lead. Even when I walk alone, I lead from within. My path is mine. My pace is mine. My silence is sacred. I trust where I'm going, because I trust who I've become. Chapter 15. Power means peace, not performance. You were taught that power looks like control, like dominance, like being the loudest one in the room, the most followed, the most seen. That power was performance, curated, constant, exhausting. But here's what you've learned. Real power is peace, the kind that doesn't rise to every challenge, the kind that doesn't chase, react, or explain, the kind that breathes deeply before responding and walks away without proving, because peace isn't weakness, it's restraint. It's what allows you to choose your response, not just offer one. It's what creates space between your triggers and your truth. And in that space, you rise, not as a reaction, but as a presence, silent, certain, whole. You've lived the performance. You've worn the mask of doing well while drowning. You've smiled for the comfort of others while betraying your own breath. You've hustled for worth, for love, for validation, and still felt unseen. But the truth is, you were never meant to be a character in someone else's script. You were never meant to play strong. You were meant to be steady. You were never meant to entertain to be loved. You were meant to be real and still be held. Power isn't in how loud you speak. It's in how softly you refuse to let someone else narrate your life. When you finally stop performing, you begin leading from within. Peace is what you feel when you no longer need to prove your healing, when you don't post to be praised, when you don't argue to be right, when you don't edit your softness to be palatable. You walk into the world with your back straight, your mind quiet, and your energy calm, because you've stopped living for reaction and started living from intention. That shift is everything. You stop defending your worth, you stop seeking applause, you stop negotiating your enoughness, because the most powerful person in any room is the one who doesn't need to perform to feel complete. They are complete by presence alone. That's who you've become, not someone who's chasing the moment. And yes, it may confuse people used to your proving, people who expect explanation. But you won't meet them where they left you. You'll meet them as you are now, anchored, no longer performing safety for their comfort, no longer bending truth to stay accepted. Your energy no longer spikes for permission. Your nervous system no longer panics at being misunderstood, because you know now. The more peaceful you become, the more powerful your life becomes. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to force to be felt. You just need to stay in alignment. Calm is your rebellion. Stillness is your strategy. Peace is your performance. And it speaks louder than words ever could. So today, whisper this truth through every breath. Power means peace, not performance. I no longer live to be seen. I live to be whole. I don't chase noise. I protect quiet. I don't beg for space. I become space. I lead not by dominating, but by embodying what I've earned. My boundaries are silent. My presence is clear. My energy doesn't need to shout. It simply is. And from this place, I am unshakable. I am free. I am home. I am done performing. I am rooted in peace. I am the power I was waiting for. I walk in calm. I move with truth. I lead my life, not for them, but for me.